So, dear Mary from Thessaloniki, good evening, as you already said. We know each other now for some 5 years. We met in a job shadowing in Greece, and then you came also to Switzerland for the job shadowing.
The other way around, the other way around.
The other way around, okay. And we met even last week at the conference in Lausanne, where you presented these video projects from your school in Biawata prison in Thessaloniki. And that's what I thought is quite interesting also to know more about. But let's start with something else. So Anna and me will ask you some questions, and I would like to start with the question, Mary, who are you? Tell us something about you. Who are you? How did you start teaching in prison, and why took you the decision to do such a weird thing?
Well, I've been teaching English for many, many years now. I don't want to say how many. At some point, I became a state school teacher, and at some point I heard about a vacancy in the Second Chance School in Biawata in 2006, the year that it opened. They were looking for an English teacher. So I wanted to do something different in my job. I'd never worked with prisoners before. I had no experience. I'd worked with adults. And so I applied for the job. I got the position. I loved it, and I'm still working there. So that's how I got it, just out of coincidence, but it was very lucky. I was very lucky, really.
Perfect.
Great. So I heard about this concept of the School of the Second Chance. Could you explain us a little bit what it is, and why do you think that it's important to teach also the foreign inmates in Greece?
Well, in Greek, right. Well, Second Chance schools exist in Greece, have started in 2000. And there are about 13 second chance schools in prisons, right? There are more prisons, but there are not second chance schools in all of them. They offer junior high school education. So they are addressed to adults who finished primary education, but haven't finished junior high school education. The teaching is based on the principles of life learning and adult education. So most of the teachers are experienced in this area. And why should we teach Greek? Because they live in a Greek environment, they live in Greek prisons. This will help them both when they are released, if they decide to live in Greece, and most of them want to stay in Greece, to remain in Greece, and also would make both their lives easier and the life of the prison staff, because they'll be able to communicate with the other inmates and with the prison staff.
Just additional question in that. Most of the prisoners, foreign prisoners, could stay in Greece after release, because we have, or let's say in Switzerland, I know another reality that most of the foreign prisoners have to leave the country. Is it a bit different in Greece?
It's a bit different, right? If they're considered very dangerous, they are when they're extradited to their country. But like 60% of the inmates are foreigners. A large majority of them are Albanians who anyway come and go from their country, so they want the language. And now we have a lot of refugees from countries like Syria, Pakistan, Afghanistan, who maybe would like to go to Western Europe, but they know that they'll have to stay in Greece for a while. So they do want to learn the language. And I know a lot of them who are still living in Greece, although they're released.
Okay, quite interesting. Okay, so, but do you think that education in prison has changed over all this year you are teaching? If yes,
yes, it has. I'd say not so much the way that education is taught, yes, but mostly the way that people see that. People outside education, like the prison staff, in the beginning, they didn't want it at all. They thought it was just bringing fuss to their daily routine. But they realized that if they have students who spend some time at school, they'll be more satisfied, they'll They'll be quieter people. They'll be better in the sense that the prison sees them. And this in turn will help the prison, the running of the prison much better. And it's their right to education. Every individual, whether he's in prison or not, has a right to education. We see that people who have finished our high school, and we wish we had more educational levels, and we're trying to do that, are better when both in prison, like they might get better positions. I remember this guy from Sahara, and although he was a foreigner, he became in charge of the prison supermarket, which they didn't usually give to somebody who's a foreigner. But the fact that he'd finished our school and he learned to speak Greek well gave him this position. So even in prison, his life became better. But of course, it will help them when they're released, because they don't just learn Greek, they learn other things. They acquire knowledge and skills in IT and English. So this will help them when they are released, maybe to continue their studies further on.
Okay. Mary, you lately you realized some video projects in your school. Could you tell us what the aim of this project was, and if you got some extra financing for this project, or it was included in your yearly budget? How did you manage it?
In the Second Chance School, apart from the subjects, we also do projects. So we try to do extracurricular activities, and making videos was one of the ideas that we had. We started to take part in a contest, in a competition, a video competition, an international one. What the students got from it, they got exposed to the various forms of art in that way. We already exposed them to various forms of art because they had to learn how to write, to make the script, how to film, photography, music, and they learned social skills as well. They learned to negotiate, to discuss, to make decisions on what they'd include in the film. And of course, they acquired more IT skills. They know how to make a video much better than I do. And the basic thing is that they had fun. I think that's the most important thing. They had fun, they had a good time, and at the same time, they learned a lot of things. And this was a way for people who are in prison to communicate with the outside society, as we say here in Greece. Now, as far as the money is concerned, we don't have an extra budget. We don't really have a yearly budget. The last years, there are a lot of financial problems in Greece, and we haven't been funded. The money, if I tell you the money that we get every year, you'll laugh, so I wouldn't even want to say it. Hopefully, it's going to change this year. So many times we just chip in, you know, I've chipped in a lot, many, many times, you know, to make this film. So, but we just use the camera, green shot, and that was it. So, you know, we don't have professional equipment, so we didn't have to spend a lot of money. That's why they're more amateur efforts, but I consider them very important because they were made by the students themselves. And that's the most important thing.
Okay. So that was, it sounds like fun, but we know as prison teachers that there are also challenges in the professional life. What was your greatest challenge in the past as a prison teacher? And on the other hand, about what you are very proud of, or even or happy about looking back at your professional life as a prison teacher?
A lot of people say, all right, I've taught adults, I'll go and work in prison. What's the difference? But I found that the biggest challenge was, you know, taking into account Mesero from Mesero, I don't know how you pronounce him, from adult education, is finding my preconceived assumptions, because when you haven't worked in prison, you don't know what prisoners are like, and you have preconceived ideas about the way you're going to teach, even if it's not in prison. If you consider yourself the authority, but you're not the authority. You have to work alongside with adults, and even more with adults who are in prison. Even if you're working with 16, 17-year-old prisoners, adulthood in the terms of adult education hasn't got to do with the age, but it has to do with how mature. And these people have faced a lot in their lives. So that was something I had to face, that I'm not the authority figure, that they're not dangerous people, or I shouldn't see them as dangerous. And I had to help them see that as well, because most of these people were people who had abandoned education when they were younger, or they had been thrown out of education because they were not good students. So they came with the fear as well. So we had to choke them that adult education, that in the second chance school, it's a different way of teaching, not, learning something by heart, but through projects, through worksheets, through discussion. So that was a big challenge, I think, both for me and for the students, for any teacher who teaches in prison. And the second, if we take it on a practical level, is showing empathy, not showing it hypocritically, but really showing empathy, getting into their shoes. I've often had teachers at my school who'd come because they say, oh, it's a morning school, it's not many hours, we don't have exams, right? But if you don't care for your students, they're adults, they'll understand it. So showing empathy, getting into their shoes. And as a director, very often they come and they talk to me in my office, they don't feel well because they're going to have a trial the next day. I say, come into my office, let's have a cup of coffee together. So you have to take a lot of roles. Of course, we're not psychologists, right? We can't take all the roles, but they appreciate that. And when they see that you really care for them, they'll give you more back. They'll give you more back. What am I proud of? The fact that they get the degrees. We've had a lot of their certificates finishing high school. And some of them have even continued their studies, have taken exams, they're at university now. But even, as a teacher, I should say that, but as a person, as a teacher, as an educator, I'd say just the fact that I've met a lot of them outside in the streets, or they've invited me to their weddings or to the baptisms of their kids, and they're still out living outside. They've changed their lives. I think that's the most important thing.
I think you're completely right. So you talked a little bit about you, but what would you say, what are the qualities essential for a teacher when teaching in prison? What do you think is the most important?
Yeah, I think I already mentioned the word empathy. I think empathy is the key word in adult education. Because we're talking about people who are incarcerated and they have hostile feelings towards themselves, towards the others. So you have to show that you see them as students and you see this transformation, how they come in the beginning and how it goes on. Also, it's very important, that's what I say to all the teachers, come to set boundaries. You will be empathetic, but you have to set boundaries. That's why we always have a contract in the beginning of the year in all the lessons. And I say that to all my teachers, and especially the women teachers, that they shouldn't dress provocatively, because we're talking about people who are in prison. So you have to be careful, you have to keep limits, you have to be friendly, but up to a point. And safety, that was what I was meaning, Thomas, when we talked about safety. In education, safety, security is a very important thing. They are in prison where they feel strangled, they feel enclosed, they don't trust anyone. So at school, every teacher who works in a prison has to provide a safe environment where they are free to express themselves. They feel free to express themselves, to develop as personalities. Otherwise, you won't succeed in anything. That's why empathy is the key word, because if you show empathy, they'll understand that you really care about them. If you set limits and boundaries in the classroom as well, that they know they have to respect other people's ideas, other nationalities, then you'll create this safe learning environment. So that's very important.
Mary, I would like to improvise a question, because I'm hearing you speaking about all these nice ideas, but do teachers in prison get some special training or whatever where they can learn everything you're saying, or they have to bring it home?
No, it's up to them. It's up to them. Right. A lot of teachers do adult education, they do special training, but when we go there, it's up to you to really develop yourself and your personality. When I went, I knew nothing. I had taught adults, but teaching them English. I knew nothing really about adult education, but I really got involved in it. I did a lot of seminars, right? We have had some seminars, but I think when somebody's new in prison, the moment he goes, the moment you hire him, you should offer him some courses, something, some kind of education on training on this subject. So because we usually don't have that, and imagine we're in December now, I only have 3 teachers, and hopefully the rest are coming at the end of December. We start in September. Because, yeah, so this is the problem, as you understand. We're supposed to have about 10 to 12 teachers. What we do at my school, at least, and I know some other directors might do, we have like an online training. We do an intern inside training. I do kind of training. I teach one of the other teachers at our school who's very experienced teacher, but that should be done by the state since our schools are funded by the state. This does not happen. And a lot of students go and, you know, pay money, not because they really want to learn about education or in prison, but because it will help them find a job. That's what I mean, that you should really want to come to these schools and not just come because you'll find a job and you get a salary. There's a big difference there. Sure. And you see that the people who just come, I had a teacher said, I want to work in a second chance school, but I want to work in a morning one, which is in prison because the other's in the afternoon, because I have a small kid. And I said, if you're coming for that reason, you shouldn't come to this school at all. And she was trying to make them become a certain religion and, you know, ignored the rest who were not Christians. And I said, this school is not for you. You have to respect everyone's. And she left the next year. She couldn't stay there. She couldn't cope with it.
So that leads us exactly also to the last question. It cannot be only the issue to find a job or whatever.
Oh, definitely.
So what advice would you give to a teacher new in prison education?
I think I told Dan a few already, but you know, the questions she asked, but I think you have to be honest. You have to work alongside your students. Get rid of these preconceived assumptions we're talking about. You're not the authority figure. You learn them how to learn, but since they're adults, you learn from their experience. They're really teaching you, and you're just conducting, let's say, the orchestra and coordinating what's happening, because you help them to promote, you want to help to promote, you're there to assist them in promoting discussion, in their critical thinking. If you're biased, if you're afraid of it, they'll realize it, and they'll treat you in the same. They'll treat you in a way that they make fun of you. They won't pay attention to your lesson. I feel I've gained more from my students than they have gained from me. So you know, I feel I've become a better person working in prison.
Perfect. I think that's the best final word of a very nice interview. Thank you so much, Mary. It was a pleasure to meet you this afternoon or this evening. And yes, hope we stay in touch. And you will see this interview in the EPEA newsletter then.
Okay, it was nice talking to you.
Yes.
It was nice seeing you again, Thomas. And it was nice meeting you, Anna.
Okay.
Yeah, same to you.
See you in Greece. Okay.